Good day, scholars. I am Dr. Twyla Williams Damon, and I love research. This will be our second discussion for this week. Welcome to our second discussion, and we will be speaking about comparing and contrasting the qualitative method with the quantitative method. As a doctoral student, you will encounter both of these methodologies in your studies and your research endeavors. And so it's very important, as I spoke to you about earlier this week, that you understand the similarities and differences so that you can knowledgeably speak to both of these types of methods. It's very, very important for you to know this, for you to select the correct approach or the correct method for your research. So let's explore the similarities and differences between qualitative method and quantitative method in research. And we can do that by first defining what each of these particular methods are. So first of all, when we talk about the qualitative method focuses on exploring and understanding the meaning of a phenomena through words, through images, through observations. It seeks to gain a rich, in depth understanding of a subject matter, and it does this by exploring perceptions, behaviors, experiences of individuals or even groups. If you really want to really put it in short terms, qualitative is somewhat touchy-feely. We want to explore, we want to understand, we want to delve into information experiences when it comes to qualitative research. In contrast, if we define quantitative method, the quantitative method, on the other hand, aims to measure and analyze numerical data to draw conclusions about a population or sometimes even a phenomena through numerical means. And quantitative method, it relies on statistical methods to identify patterns, trends, and correlations, in contrast to the qualitative method where we use coding processes to do so. So even though these definitions are quite different, there are some key similarities between the qualitative research method and the qualitative quantitative research method. And so let's talk a little bit about these before we go into the differences. And so some similarities would include that in both qualitative method and quantitative method, both of them have the research purpose of answering questions and solve problems related to a specific topic or issue. Okay. And so we know that a dissertation does not solve a problem. That's not the intention of most dissertations. The purpose behind it is to find an answer to something. And both of these methods do just that. Another similarity is that both qualitative method and quantitative method um, have different research designs under their headings or under their umbrella, as I like to say. There's also a different method that we have heard of, and I'm sure you've heard of, called mixed methods. However, for the purposes of a dissertation, we do not have students do this because it's basically conducting two studies. You're doing both a qual and a quant method study. And so to graduate, you just need one. And so that's why we kind of veer away from this. But even under that particular method, there are different designs under that method. And so, if we want to come to some type of similarity, we can say that both the qualitative method and the quantitative method are composed of different designs and different approaches under them. Another similarity that we can speak to about the qualitative and the quantitative method is that both of them employ data collection. Okay, both of them. And whether this is through observations, interviews, surveys, instruments, um, uh, collecting numerical data, both methods include a data collection component. Even though they differ in what actually happens, it's still a type of data collection attached to both methods. And then also, another similarity could be the actual analysis and interpretation piece. Again, when we talk about qualitative research, and when we talk about quantitative method, both of them require analysis and interpretation to draw the meaningful conclusions that we are looking for and that we start our study out with in search of when we start our actual research studies. So that being said, similarities are there. However, there are also some key differences that we need to speak about. Um, when we talk about qualitative method, data types are quite different from in the quantitative method. Okay, and we kind of know what we're getting to here. I've kind of said this a couple of times before. There's a significant difference. First of all, in the qualitative method, we focus on non-numerical data, text, images, descriptions, those types of things. While on the quantitative method side, we rely heavily on numerical data. That's exactly what we're looking for. Another difference we can go to is our research questions. In a qualitative method, the researcher is typically asking open-ended questions, and encouraging the actual participant to explore and give us answers that we can have a deeper understanding of. Alternatively, the quantitative method focuses on more close-ended questions that can be measured and analyzed, thus the Likert scale, those types of questions and answers that they're looking for so that they can statistically attach numbers to it. Another key difference between the quantitative method and the qualitative method are the actual research questions. And so when we're talking about the qualitative method, the researcher Oh, I think I talked about that already. I'm sorry, sampling strategies. Okay. Sampling strategies, I can go to that. That's a big difference between qualitative method and quantitative method. Okay. How do they differ? Well, in the qualitative method, sampling strategies often employ like purposeful sampling, and you'll learn about the different sampling techniques as you go throughout this actual program. But they do that purposefully to gather data from small, diverse groups. While in the quantitative method, they rely heavily on probability sampling, and these ensure representativeness of the group and usually require much larger numbers than what a qualitative method would need to be. Oftentimes, because of this, what I'm talking about, students who may have started off with a quantitative study may shift to qualitative because they can't reach the minimal sample size to be reliable and valid that's needful in a quantitative study. And so that's also something to think about. Another key difference between qualitative method and the quantitative method is the data analysis piece. And so the data analysis techniques, they vary greatly between the two methods. Qualitative is analyzed through coding, themes, categories, patterns, and quantitative method is analyzing using statistical software, different statistical tests, identify those same trends or correlations that they're looking for numerically. One of the last differences that I can speak to is generalizability. And so in the quantitative method, it aims for generalizability to larger populations, whereas in the qualitative method, not so much all the time. We primarily seek to understand a specific case or a context. Even though we want transferability, the generalizability piece is not always there for the qualitative method. So, in speaking about these similarities and differences, there are some ways that we can utilize this information to be able to choose between qualitative or quantitative method for our particular study. And so, in that decision, there's some considerations that we can think about. First of all, when you're thinking about your particular research question or what you're thinking that research question will be, does that approach, qualitative or quantitative method, align with your research question? Is your research question asking for numbers? Is it asking for statistical analyses? Are your research questions asking for understanding, exploration, perceptions, descriptions. And so, if that is actually the case, if you're looking for the understanding and description, then you probably need to go the qualitative method. However, if you want to measure something, if you want to quantify something, then quantitative method is probably more suitable for your research. Another way to think about it when you're trying to make a decision between the qualitative method and the quantitative method is what is your research objectives? Okay, consider that. Do you want to understand the complexities of a phenomena? Well, we know that that's qualitative method. If you want to identify patterns or correlations or causes or relationships, then the quantitative method is more appropriate for your study. Also, you can look at the different resources to help you make a decision. Look at the resources, evaluate the resources that you have. Not in all cases, but the quantitative method often requires more resources. You know, you need more participants, as I talked about, more numbers of people to be in your study, or more sources of data or data points to be in the study. So you have to have enough data to be able to support the quantitative study. And sometimes, you know, the time to access that many people if you don't already have the data. Money attached to doing this and time, because time is money. And sometimes you have to get additional personnel to help you understand the statistical analyses or be able to navigate hundreds and hundreds, thousands of data points, depending on what your study is. Okay. And so this is in some cases, not in all. And so those are some resource areas that you might want to think about if you're considering quantitative method. Also, in the ethical considerations, as we did in the last video that I spoke to you about, um, we have to consider those ethical implications of your choice. And some studies require informed consent or anonymity. In some cases, you may be more feasible, you know, with the qualitative method if that's what the requirement is. Whereas if you have archival data where that data has already been collected and you're not really concerned about having to do that, then a quantitative study or quantitative method may be a great choice for you. So, in conclusion, both the qualitative method and the quantitative method offer different approaches to understanding phenomena or a situation or a circumstance. And so, while you know those methods share some similarities, as we've talked about, their differences still lie in the types of data, research questions that are employed, different sampling strategies. Data analysis techniques are definitely different. And then, of course, when we talked about the generalizability, it's a bit different. But by understanding those differences, it'll help you select a more suitable method for your particular research goals, and it'll make sure that your study contributes meaningful information into the field, and that you've chosen a method that's actually applicable to your study. So again, thank you for joining me in sharing information on this topic. I hope this discussion has clarified the major distinctions between the qualitative method and the quantitative method in research, and has provided you with some valuable insights for your decisions for your future studies. So for further information on this subject, see your week one required readings as well as your recommended readings. And again, I am Dr. Twyla Williams, and I will see you next week.